Okay, all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Luncheon with the Experts, a Carcinoid Cancer Foundation program brought to you by Insurer Therapeutics. My name is Rain Bennett. I am a filmmaker. I've been working with CCF for quite a while now, almost 10 years, to create video content that helps spread awareness and education about NETs, neuroendocrine tumors. And we do that through this series. We do that through produced videos that we have here on the Facebook page under the videos tab, as well as the YouTube channel for Carcinoid Cancer Foundation. And this is a community that I'm very proud to be a part of. And all you people that show up to the show every week, I'm just so grateful. We're so grateful for your attendance and you helping us establish that community. I really enjoy seeing that created by this show. So if you are one of our regulars, you know the deal. Let us know where you are from, where you're signing on from in the world. And if you're new, that's your first instruction. Hope you all are having a great day so far. I just want to take a moment and thank our sponsors, our new sponsors, Insurer Therapeutics, for their support of the Luncheon with the Experts series. And we want to make an announcement. This happened for the first week last week, that they have acquired Zermello from Lexicon Pharmaceuticals. So Insurer will be the sponsor of the series going forward. Lexicon's clinical nurse educator team has transitioned to Insurer. There will be no disruption in Zermello nursing support for patients. And if you'd like to speak with a clinical nurse educator, please visit CCF's website, carcinoid.org, and on the homepage, you will see the information in the latest news section. So just a quick disclaimer from our sponsors. We want to say that the opinions expressed by the guest presenter today, as well as the questions asked by the audience, that you all at home, have not been created or suggested by the sponsors of Luncheon with the Experts. And CCF does not endorse or promote any of the views, opinions, or information provided in this presentation. Audience members should not rely solely on the opinions or information expressed by the guest presenter, and should seek guidance and direction from their own medical advisors regarding any choices they make about their health or treatments. So all that means is we're going to try to give you a lot of great advice today, but we don't know your specific case. And so any decisions you make, just talk with your home team. Make sure that you're making the best decision with those people who know your case. So today, our guest is Laurie Todd, AKA the Insurance Warrior. I am very excited about this episode, and I have been for some time. Laurie, how are you?
I'm doing well.
So you are on the West Coast, right? You're in Seattle?
Yes, in Seattle.
Joining us in the morning. First thing she's doing, she's spending time with us, and I'm grateful for that. Laurie, for those, I know that we're going to have a lot of people interested in this episode because people ask about insurance every week. But tell the people who aren't as familiar with you a little bit about yourself, how you fit into this community.
How I fit into the community?
Yeah. What do you do exactly? What is the Insurance Warrior?
I write and fight appeals when life-saving treatments are denied. That's what I do. And you don't just sit down one day and decide, oh, I think I'm going to fight crazy, impossible insurance cases for the rest of my life.
Right.
This began because I was the patient. So you're also talking to a patient today. And I was diagnosed in March 2005 with a rare cancer and rushed into surgery and given months to live. And because I had an unusual cancer, I was sent to the chief of oncology. And I sat down and I said, so I have appendix cancer. What's the treatment for that? And he said, there is no treatment for your disease. And even if there were, they wouldn't pay for it.
Whoa.
That's how we started. So I had to fight my local doctors, my insurance, and everybody in order to get the treatment that I needed. I had the world's crappiest insurance. I had a catastrophic individual policy with a $5,000 deductible and a $16,000 out of pocket. Yes. And I thought, if I'm going to fight this insurance company, I'm going to go to the best surgeon in the whole world. And so I found him and borrowed frequent flyer miles and went for a consultation. And he scheduled a surgery, and I had a month to make my insurer pay for it. It was an HMO that had no out-of-network benefit. they had no intention of paying for this surgeon all the way across the country. So I made it my full-time job. I sat at the library on the floor and read the entire shelf of Washington state insurance regulations. I learned everything there was to know about my HMO. I cadged all the free advice I could find, and I sat down and wrote a 23-page document. Nobody thought that I would win. 3 days later, they called me and said, well, we decided to pay for it. I flew to Washington, D.C. again. It was 15 years ago. In other words, I made the right decision because I'm fine 15 years later. 15 years ago, I flew to Washington, D.C., had another 14-hour surgery, was in the hospital 43 days, and I've never needed any medical treatment since then. So I flew back to Seattle finally, and I'd been home about 6 weeks. I was sitting there like the 100-year-old woman in my pajamas after going through all this. And it was a call from a fellow from my appendix cancer group. He said, Laurie, we heard you had a great victory. Me? My insurance will pay for it. And I said, Bob, I don't know if what I did here is going to help you with Independence Blue Cross in Philadelphia, but let's give it a whirl. I got nothing else to do. So we cut and we pasted, and he sent it in. And 3 days later, they called him. He called me. Laurie, they're going to pay for it. That's how it all started. That first year, I did 31 appeals and won all of them, all around the country. And then I got kind of tired of explaining this over and over again. And so I thought, I'll just write it all down and give this to people and let them fight their own battles. And then I thought, this is a book. Because there is no book. There was no book for me on how to really, really win an insurance. So I found a cancer foundation and I wrote a grant proposal, and they granted me the funds to do it myself, publish the book myself, which I did. And I knew that as soon as the book came out, I would find other people with other kinds of diseases and conditions would find me. You get a little tired of always fighting appeals for your same old cancer, And so I think it was about 2007, I got a call from a gal named Suzanne Lindley. And she had colon cancer, and which had metastasized to the liver. And she was fighting appeals for people for Y90 treatments. Mm-hmm. And that was how I first met people from the Carcinoid community. So she was writing these appeals, and we got to talking and so forth. And she said, may I send you an appeal so that you could look at it for me and kind of correct it and juice it up for me? And back then, I didn't know any better that really wasn't such a great idea. Mm. So I took this appeal of hers and just went wild on it. And I think I wrote 14 pages of commentary and sent it back to her. Fast forward 2 years, Suzanne asked me to speak at a conference for targeted liver therapies in Chicago. And we were sitting there after the conference, and everybody was packing up, and we're just sitting around. And she said, I need to tell you something. And I thought, ooh, this isn't good. And she said, when you critiqued that appeal of mine? I said, yeah. She said, I cried all day. She said, I thought that I did a pretty good job. She said, and then I talked, Suzanne had friends in high and low places and everywhere. And she knew Randy Pausch, the man who wrote the last lecture. Mm-hmm. He was a professor who had pancreatic cancer and wrote a book about the last lecture. Well, she knew Randy, and she told Randy about this awful experience with me. And Randy said, Laurie must care a lot about you to do that for you. And I said, wow. And my lesson there was compassion. Yeah. And that really is what I learned. I've now been doing this for 15 years, and I grow in compassion. So this is a lot bigger for me than red tape or any of that. So well, I have, go ahead.
I know I have a lot of questions, and we'll get to them.
Okay.
Before we fully get started, I want to tell everybody. So this is a really unique episode. We have a lot of patient advocates, which obviously Laurie is. But I know you all have insurance questions because I see them every week. So this is a unique opportunity for you to have someone who's been fighting these fights for a long time of various, in various sizes and scopes and various diseases. So send in your questions about your situation, and hopefully Laurie can give you some insight and some information and some guidance. Just let us know if we can't get to your question, or you have follow-up questions that we aren't able to get to. We have this show for an hour, and we'll be doing them every week. But if we don't get to your question, I urge you to follow up with the Carcinoid Cancer Foundation here on their Facebook page. You can send them a private message, or also you can reach out to them and email them at carcinoid.org. Another thing that helps me, if you ask a question, I say this every week, if you see a question that either you would like the answer to as well, or you think is an important question, it just helps me. If you kind of like that question, you can just hit the little like button, and it lets me know. It kind of upvotes it, so it kind of lets me know that there's a demand for that question. I can make sure that I get it across to Laurie. And finally, before we start, I just want to say that we know how challenging it can be to be a net patient or person seeking diagnosis, especially during the pandemic, 2020. And we want you to know that CCF is here for you whenever, however you need us. We love creating programs like this. And if you'd like to show your support in return, help us continue to create programs like this, an easy way to do that is with a donation. Small, large, any size really helps. And a really easy way to do that is to text the word experts to the number 1-914-380-7323. Again, that's texting the word experts to 914-380-7323. And sincerely, every donation helps, and it helps us continue to make these programs as well as our other videos. So go ahead.
May I say one thing before we start?
Of course you can. You're our guest of honor.
Alrighty then. I don't think of myself as a patient advocate per se.
Okay, fair enough.
I consider myself to be an insurance strategist.
Got it.
And the reason for that is that if people only remember one thing from what I say today, I would like to say that no appeal was ever meant to lead to an approval. We have to start there, because this is not a good faith process. So when people wish me luck on an appeal, I say not luck, strategy.
This is a good place to start. Why is that? I mean, that statement, why is that true? Why are appeals not set up for approval? What exactly? Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. What does that mean?
Why are they not meant to lead to an approval? Because the reason an insurance company denies a treatment is because they don't want to pay for it. And so they have an appeals process set up, but once you get down in those weeds, you realize that if you do exactly what they say, you'll lose.
It's set up that way. It's
absolutely set up that way on every level. And anyone who's ever called an insurance company on the phone knows that they have phone strategies. You stay on the phone for an hour. They stay on the phone for an hour. They might give you the wrong number to call. You call 3 different people, and they have 3 different advice. There are strategies involved. So just for an example, every appeals department for every insurance company is a post office box. So my quiz question, why a post office box? Why always? It's because there's no accountability at a post office box. You can't call a post office box on the phone. You can't march up and down in front of a post office box with a sign. If you send your appeal only to that post office box, it's like the Bermuda Triangle. It's never coming out of there. So if no appeal was ever meant to lead to an approval, then we win by thoroughly understanding the insurance company's appeals procedures and then doing exactly the opposite. So what's the opposite of the P.O. box? The opposite of the P.O. box is the CEO of the parent company. And so I send appeals to the top 20 decision makers at the insurance plan. I spend hours and hours digging up their personal emails, their personal office phone numbers, which they don't want me to have, because access is power. If you're sending it to the P.O. box, you have no power. So, the insurance company doesn't care if we need a treatment. They don't care if our doctor says we need a treatment. They don't care if we're going to die if we don't get a treatment. There's only one question that any insurer cares about when deciding whether to pay or not. Are we required to pay for this per the terms of your contract? Every appeal is a contractual dispute. So another way to put that is to say, we don't win an appeal or prove an appeal using our words. We win an appeal using their words. I have tons of strategies, to win these appeals, but for me, it really is about empowering people when they're feeling the most victimized, when they think there's nothing they can do.
And that's tough, right? When you're in that state, you feel hopeless. It's hard to feel empowered. Is there a certain strategy to that? Like, what makes them see that light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, a number of things. I mean, it's sort of hard to answer that. It's just my whole way I am with people. I got a teaching degree 100 years ago. I'm teaching, I'm coaching, I'm fluffing them up. And I don't like write the appeal and send it out like a lawyer would. We work on it together. We get into the lifeboat together, and it's their appeal. So I don't write it as me. Anthem Blue Cross doesn't care how smart I am. What's most scary to an insurance company is a super smart patient. Because why? It's a contractual dispute. And you, the patient, are the one who holds the contract. So that the wonderful secret here is that the patient is the only one who has any power over the insurance company.
That's good.
So we get in there together, and I coach them and I teach them. And after I write the 30-page, I send it to them to read. And that's a huge leap of power because the insurance company thinks they wrote it. And then over the weekend, usually I'm coaching them on how to do the phones. Because if you just send an appeal to an insurance company and don't follow up with the executives you sent it to, it's still probably not going anywhere. So I found all my precious phone numbers. And over the weekend, I'm coaching them. We're doing role plays. I'm teaching them how to talk to these people on the phone to get what you need out of them, which is, when can we expect a decision on that? And then Monday morning, I put them on the phones. And I'm sitting here right behind them. They call the executive, they call me back, they tell me what they said, and then I strategize what to do next. And by golly, when they get on those phone calls and that works, and now the insurance company isn't the boss anymore, we've gently taken back control, there's where the real empowerment comes in. And then finally, we win. We usually send on Sunday, and then by Tuesday noon, we have a decision. And when they call me and say, Laurie, we won, that's the ultimate in power.
I think hearing that is one of the things that can certainly make a patient feel hopeful when they're kind of feeling discouraged, like hearing that they have the power themselves, especially if they get educated. We talk all the time on the show about how important it is to educate yourself on this disease.
Absolutely.
This is a big part of our mission here at the foundation. And I want to say, everybody, I see some likes and loves coming in, and that's really helpful. That lets us know that we're doing our job, and that Laurie is saying some great things that are being helpful to you. I also see that our numbers are rising, which is great. That makes us excited. So if you know somebody right now that would benefit from this conversation, which is a unique opportunity, go ahead and share the video. You can share that with them now and let them know. You can tag them in the comments and get them here. But just know, if they don't make it or you want to revisit the video, it will live here and it'll be evergreen on the Facebook page under the videos tab. And then starting Monday, we will republish it to the Carcinoid Cancer Foundation's YouTube page. So for someone who doesn't have Facebook, they can access it there. Laurie, we have Susan who says Laurie is a saint. So people are loving you already. Mary, hello from the Outer Banks in North Carolina. That's awesome. I'm from Little Washington. Where exactly are you from? Laurie, I want to go back a little bit.
Yes.
And learn a little bit more about what you were doing before you got diagnosed. What line of work are you in?
That's a huge question. I'm 70 years old, so I'm the generation that did everything.
I got you.
I'll try to be as brief as possible, but
Okay.
In 1972, I graduated with a teaching degree in French and Spanish in Michigan. Then the next degree I got, I was pretty good at school, so I thought, well, I'll do some more of that. So I came out to Seattle and did my master's degree in French literature, of all things. And everything really factors into this work that I'm doing now. Because with a master's in literature, you're trained as a literary critic. And as they used to say, that and a dime will get you a cup of coffee. But but stories are integral with what I do. You know, you asked how I'm empowering people. I shamelessly share my own story, which is utterly impossible to win. And I share stories of other people that might be more like a little bit like them.
Mhm.
And so we're like proving that all things are possible. So I got the master's in French literature, and then I didn't know what to do once I got done with that. So I worked as a secretary and a file clerk and all kinds of things like that. Then in the 1980s, I sold real estate in California, and I got another master's in psychology.
Mhm.
And one thing and another, I went back to Seattle. And when I fell ill in 2005, I'd been working as a massage therapist for 13 years. So, in other words, as a massage therapist, I was actually a provider for some insurance companies. So I got a little bit of learning that side of it. And then in 2005, I fell ill and immediately lost my business,
Mm.
my income. I had no money, no partner, no help. And, you know, for me, that was fine. And it really serves as a story to tell people things are possible.
I really see like how all those things do lead to what you do now. Like you're pulling from all these
Crazy,
skills and experiences that you've learned along the way, and
right?
you can literally see how each one is attached to the way you play
Crazy.
for
And I
people.
mean, you know, when you get a master's in anything, it's like you learn how to research
Right.
and take notes and read articles. And I mean, I eat scientific articles for lunch.
Which is not easy to do.
No, that's how I found my expert, by the way. I mean, back in 2005, there weren't all these groups and so forth. And I had 6 different stories from 6 different local doctors, and I knew they didn't know what they were talking about. So I went immediately to the science. I came home, popped on PubMed, which
Mm.
is the database of scientific articles for the NCI, National Cancer Institute. And I just typed in the name of my disease, and I read and read and read because science was the rock that I stood on. And science always has a place in all these appeals, because not because insurers care about science, but because they can't ignore it. And so I go and I find 10 times as much science as they have for their position.
That's awesome. I've got some questions coming in from the audience,
Yes,
so I
good.
want to go ahead because you know I could talk to you forever about this kind of stuff. So we have a question from Eva that says, Laurie, what about the insurance company? What about when the insurance company says it's experimental? They cite their disclaimer. How do we go about
Mhm.
getting something approved?
Great question. What was her name again?
Eva.
Eva? Eva, that's a great question. When people get a denial and it says we're denying this as experimental, the first thing we need to know is, what does experimental mean?
Mhm.
You can't counter it if you don't know what it means. So people believe that experimental means it's a treatment that's too new, uh, it's not FDA approved, no randomized clinical trial, not enough randomized trials. It doesn't mean any of that. All it means is whatever the insurer says it means. In other words, in the context of appeals, and the same goes for not medically necessary or medical necessity. Medical necessity doesn't mean not clinically appropriate. It just means whatever they say it means. In other words, these are legal terms, not clinical terms. So what do I do when I'm working on a denial like that? The first thing I do is I look up that insurer's definition of experimental. You go to your benefits book, and that's where all the appeals procedures are in there. Job one, get your benefits book and start looking at it. You'll find all your appeals procedures in there. How many appeals you get, how long they give themselves to decide, all sorts of detail on appeals, and there's a section on definitions. Definitions are your friend. You look up their definition of experimental, and what you'll find is that it's meant to intimidate. It might be like 6 different sections, like A, B, C, D, E, and you simply print it, go through it, study it, and go through the sections one by one and prove that the treatment that you need is not experimental per their own definition. It's pretty simple. You don't even have to, you just use their definition. Same if they deny it is not medically necessary. You think, how could it not be medically necessary? I need it. My doctor says I need it.
Mhm.
it means whatever they say it means. Same thing. I always do that. And the definition is different for every insurer. So you just look it up and prove your case by it.
What was it? I know you talked a lot about, helping that first person. Was there? Tell me about the moment when you decided to pivot basically your life and your livelihood to this fight and serving people in this manner. I mean, that's a big leap.
It's
Uh,
huge.
yeah.
It,
What gave?
I really like that question, Rain, because uh, it was almost easier for me in a way because I was felled like a giant redwood by this disease. I had a very advanced case of cancer and
Hmm,
I nearly died of it. It wiped out my career. I wasn't going to be a massage therapist anymore.
hmm,
Although I was well, I just didn't have that kind of energy anymore. It just wasn't going to happen. So it was like they say in literature, tabula rasa, everything was washed away in the tsunami. So I had no idea what I was going to do. So people started calling me to write these appeals, and I started writing them, and I'm winning them, and I'm still pretty tired. And I was doing it for free that first year because I just couldn't figure out how I would charge for it.
right.
And then there came a night, I'll never forget it. I was writing appeal for a local couple, and I was staying up all night, which many times it's like really an emergency, timely, like surgery is in a couple days. So I'm staying up all night, and they were at a party at their yacht club. And I thought, I'm staying up all night. They're at a party. I said, what's wrong with this picture?
Right.
And I thought, this has to feel good for me too. And
Yeah.
it has to be sustainable.
That's
So
the
the next
word.
one that came along, it was the doctor that told the patient. The surgeon said they got arrived for the surgery. And the surgeon said to them, you owe Laurie Todd. You need to pay her for that appeal. So I thought, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. But it really took me about a year and a half to realize that this was my work. And what really sustained me always was how I felt when I won. I mean, when someone calls me and says we won, I mean, the joy is immeasurable.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. This is a way smaller scale, but I helped a client win or have a successful crowdfunding campaign just yesterday, and just that little feeling of like I
That
helped
feeling.
them and them being so excited and winning.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is obviously magnified by
Right.
exponentially, but that feeling is true when you're really seeking to serve people like that. Them winning is you winning. I love that
And
point that
you know what? I mean, there's a million things that are stressful about it, but it's
sure.
kind of a stress that I thrive on. And I think I'm sitting here in my pajamas writing an appeal that makes a CEO who earns $60 million a year do the right thing. It's worth it. Yeah.
You talked about stress. If we can, I don't want to digress too much, but I'm really interested to learn more about the massage therapist aspect of your life, but specifically how that applies to patients. Is that something that even though you're not a therapist currently, is that
Mhm.
something that you recommend? Is that something that you think help could help someone navigate all the issues that happen when you get a diagnosis like this?
Well, it's a long time ago that I moved on from that career, but
Right.
absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's going to cure scar tissue or anything like that. But no, I'm totally in favor of it. But yeah, I moved on from massage a long time ago.
Yeah. I just we talk a lot on the show about kind of a holistic approach and how all the different pillars of
Mhm.
health are intertwined. And so I didn't know if you thought that would be something that
Oh, I
you
do.
recommend to somebody.
Oh, I absolutely do. Yeah.
So walk me through, pretend I know nothing, and walk me through the typical insurance process. So I mean, if you get sick, you visit a doctor, then you file a claim essentially, and an appeal comes after that, after a denial. Is that accurate? Or
Thank you for that question. It's like, how does it happen and where do we
yeah,
start?
yeah.
And the first thing I tell people is that if you file an appeal after the treatment,
Mhm.
it's 100 times more difficult to win it. I'm
Why is
not
that?
saying you can't win it, but think about it. You're out of the store with the groceries. You've lost your leverage. The story I use to illustrate this is, let's say you wanted a jacket and you know exactly what color, what size, the fabric, everything perfect, and you want to spend $100 for it. So you go down to the swap meet and you find like the perfect jacket, except the guy wants $200 for it. are you better off negotiating your price before you take the jacket home, or to bring the jacket home, bring it back the next day and say, I'd really like my $100 back.
Yeah, that's a
So
good one.
how it really happens is that the treatment or drug or test, imaging, whatever, is denied. And person panics, and the first thing they do is think their doctor will appeal it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because people believe that they need somebody bigger and more powerful and more fluffy to do this for them. And so then the doctor loses all their appeals, because doctors have no power over insurance companies. If the doctor is in network, he's bound by contract to the insurance company. If he's out of network, they really don't care what he says. So doctor loses all the appeals. And then the patient realizes they've got to do something. And they either happen across me, or either they write an appeal and lose it, and then they stumble across me. So so it gets denied. And the way it should work, the best, most effective way to have it work, is when a treatment is denied, the patient says, I'll take that over. And they start writing their appeal, researching and writing their appeal.
Now, is there anything that can be done before the denial, like leading up to that, for them to give themselves the best fighting chance?
Well, that's another excellent question. Because people would like to, well, first of all, no, because you can't appeal it until they deny it.
Right.
You're appealing a denial, so they have to deny it.
Sure, but
and people would like to take care of this as soon as possible.
Sure.
So it's not so stressful, not so close when they need the treatment, surgery. But the sad thing is that speed is a strategy, and the time of delivering the appeal is a strategy. And just because I've had so many in years past, like emergency ones that had to be won overnight, I've learned that the closer your appeal is to the time of the surgery, the more likely you are to win it. And that's because speed is a strategy. The longer you give an insurance company to chew on something, the more ways they're going to find to deny it. The whole idea is to hit the higher ups, push them through it as quickly as possible, kind of before they know what hit them, and then you win.
Speed is a strategy. I like that.
Because remember, look at insurance companies. You can tell speed is a strategy because for them, delay equals deny, and slowing down is a strategy for them. For example, if they give themselves 30 days to decide a standard appeal, they'll make their decision in 31 days. Do you think they were really thinking about your appeal for 30 days? No, speed is a strategy. So another thing, I get every appeal expedited. So what does that mean? If you get your denial and you just don't get it expedited, the insurer will take 30 days to decide. It's usually 30 days, sometimes even longer. And if you let it take 30 days, you just lost your appeal. Why? Because they don't need 30 days. Speed is a strategy. So how do we get it expedited? If you look in anybody's benefits book, anywhere, it'll say, we will expedite your appeal if you have a letter, if your treating physician states that using the standard appeal time will harm your health. Your health will be harmed if we use the standard appeal time. So one of the first things I do when I'm talking to people and I'm working with them is I say, I need this, this, and this. I need your benefits book, your denial letter. And do you have any local doctors who are in favor of this? Yes. I say, we need a letter from them stating that your health will be harmed if it's not expedited. And I said, and since doctors don't always know how to word that, I'll write the letter. You just take it on into your doctor and have him sign it, and it will be included in your appeal. So in other words, we're proving to them with their own words that they have to expedite it.
Got it.
And expedite usually means like 72 hours, but we're not going to let them take 72 hours. Speed is a strategy.
I love that. That's a perfect little golden nugget there. So we have a comment from Wendy. It says, I had cancer and cancer insurance, but I was misdiagnosed, of course. BCBS dumped me because I was diagnosed with everything but cancer, like a lot of people are in this situation. And she says, no recourse. Is there any advice you would have for somebody in a situation like that who was just dumped by their provider?
Well, that's kind of a specific case in the sense that I don't know what grounds they gave her for dumping her or what insurance company it was. Or, I mean, sometimes it depends on what was written in your contract and all. sad to say, cancer insurance is usually not very adequate insurance
Hmm.
in the first place.
Yeah, I grew up in Eastern North Carolina. It sounds to me an awful lot like when you get flood insurance and they'll find
Yes, yes,
anyway. Oh, I'm sorry, that rain came from the wind.
right. Or in
That's what they.
cancer, with cancer policies, they'll find all kinds of ways why it wasn't really cancer.
Right,
Or,
right.
so I wish I could say that, but if you looked at the individual case, there might be some way that you could leverage it and prove something. Okay.
All right. Oh, well, Wendy, if you have anything to follow up with or any more information that might help Laurie give you some guidance, just let us know. I know that you'll stick around. I keep seeing a question, or it's kind of a broad question, but you might know how to take it. It just says, ask Laurie about self-insured companies.
Oh, thank you.
So first of all,
Oh,
let's establish what that is. I mean, I
oh
can
yeah.
use context clues, but tell me what that
Oh,
is,
I
and
love that
then it
question.
seems like you've got some stuff to say. So I'll
Oh,
just
I
give you
love
the.
that question. You know, um, Over 80%, it has to do with employer plans,
Okay.
employees. And over 80% of employees in the US are insured in self-funded plans,
Mm-hmm.
and 0% of them know it.
Wow.
And 0% of them understand what self-funded is. And why would that be? Like maybe the employer and the insurer don't really want you to understand what it is. So what self-funded means is that the insurer is not paying for your medicines. They aren't paying for your surgery, your prescriptions, your doctor visits. It's not the insurer paying anymore. It's invisible to you, but the one who's paying for all your medical treatments is the employer. It's coming right out of their checking account. So, in other words, the insurer magically becomes what they call a third party administrator, and the employer is paying for your medical treatments. So, because the employer is financially at risk, the employer is the final decision maker on all your medical treatments. Scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, your employer gets to decide whether your child gets brain surgery.
Goodness.
And also, people find themselves, it's totally disempowering because when something goes bad wrong with you, it's going to be really expensive, right?
Yeah.
Could easily be denied. And so suddenly the employee finds themselves fighting, if they even ever understand it, find themselves fighting their employer and their insurer. So if you're in a self-funded plan and all you do is send your appeal to the insurance company, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree. You have to include the employer in that. And I'm very cautious and careful and gentle about how I include the employer. It's really subtle because they're pretty uncomfortable with the liability involved with making medical decisions. So the simplest way to put it is I make sure with my 20 decision makers that 2 of them are the CEO of the employer and the highest level executive in the HR department, being the executive vice president usually. And then I'll make like maybe one sentence in the cover letter showing them that I know that they're involved. Like I'm sure that Anthem Blue Cross of California, Acme Widget Company, and I have the same goal, the best treatment and the best outcome for me. I'll mention them once. So I would tell you that I've been doing this for 15 years. I just won appeal number 225.
Wow.
And over the last 8 or 10 years, almost all of them have been self-funded plans.
So you said that most people aren't aware that.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, how do they become aware? Like,
Well,
why
if
does
they
that happen?
stumble across me, but the way you can become aware, if you want to know if your plan is, you need to know if your plan is self-funded.
Right. It
That's
seems
not
that
an issue.
way. Yeah.
You have to, because the death panel is your employer, not your insurer. So you look in your benefits book. That's where you start. With any question, I don't start by asking the employer or the insurer. I start by looking it up in the benefits book because that's in writing. So you look in there, and maybe the first page or the second page, there'll be some wording about the plan. And a quick and dirty way is if the title of your benefits book is summary plan document, that's usually a self-funded plan. If your employer has over, I would say 500 employees, that's for sure a self-funded plan. And if you are a state employee, a teacher, anything like that, it's work for a hospital system, those are all self-funded plans. So, and if worst comes to worst, you could call your employer and find out, but I don't know what kind of answer you'll get, whether it'll be candid or not.
Whew. Yeah. Well,
So it's a huge, it's probably the biggest scandal. I mean, you wonder, why would an employer even sign up for this?
right. This is, yeah.
Here comes Acme Insurance, and they say, employer, we have this great plan for you to sign up for this year. You get to pay for all the medical treatments. And the employer says, what? An organ transplant, that could be like $3 million. We'll go broke. And Acme Insurance says, don't worry, you'll have another kind of insurance for that. That will be your stop loss insurance. So don't worry about going broke. But your administrative costs will be much less with a self-funded plan, the cost to you, and the premiums to your employees will be much lower. And that's all they'll ever notice. Don't worry, we'll make sure you don't have to pay for things. We have all sorts of ways of denying things and shrinking the network, and we'll make sure you don't pay out too much. And the other thing with self-funded plans, the other advantage to the insurer and the employer is that they evade all state insurance regulations. If you call the insurance commissioner and say, hey, I have some questions, I have this plan at work, and they'll say, we can't talk to you. We have nothing to do with it. It's a self-funded plan. It's brilliant. It's diabolically brilliant.
Right. It's,
yeah.
Geez.
So I take great relish. I mean, I've fought Microsoft twice. I fought IBM twice. I fought Tennessee Valley Authority, and I fought probably the biggest, Boeing, twice. I get a kick out of it. I mean, they're huge, but they're vulnerable because they're liable. There have been lawsuits successful where the employer denied a treatment and a lawyer was able to prove that the patient died because they didn't get that treatment. It's not an easy thing to prove, but it has happened, and the employer has suffered for it, which they should.
So everybody at home, we've got about 20 minutes left of today's Luncheon with the Experts with Laurie Todd, the insurance warrior. She is clearly a warrior, and she's fighting for you because she had to fight for herself. So get your questions in now. I know some of you all are struggling with this. And just know that if we don't get to your question, or if you have follow-up questions, you can always reach out. You can always refer back to the video. A lot of people come back and watch it later because it's just going to live here on the videos tab. Also starting Monday on the YouTube channel, so you can always refer back to it. You can always send follow-up questions to CCF. Another special announcement for today, which some of you may think I'm pandering, and I might be a little bit, but today is my first anniversary with my wife, so shout out to her, October 1st. I won't do this every year, but today is a special one, so I'd be remiss and probably a little bit in trouble if I didn't say, Maya, I love you. So Laurie, I was wondering, how has this year affected the way you serve people? Have you had to pivot in any major ways? Has it changed your business and your style of doing what you do?
No, not in the least. Just it concerned me at first. I think when the pandemic started in March, I got a case come my way for a gal who was in New York. And not only was she in New York, but she was an RN who would go out and inspect nursing homes. Mm-hmm. And so her employer, it was a self-funded plan, and her employer was the state of New York. And I thought, I'm going to be like sending this appeal to Cuomo, the governor, and everybody else while they're in the middle of fighting a pandemic. It's like, I felt pretty badly about it. But you know what? It went just like it always went. The people at the insurance company, some of them were working from home, but I'm blessed that I can do all this right here from where you see me right now. So no, it hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. I've seen that some of my I call them my helpies. I'm the helper and they're the helpie. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they have to go quarantine for a while before they get a surgery or a treatment where they're going, but no, it hasn't changed anything really.
Good. I'd like to revisit something we talked about a little earlier. I see some comments coming up in the comment thread about the advice to reach out to the CEO and just go,
We don't reach out.
Okay.
No reaching out. We are not going to bother them. We're not going to.
Right. Let's clarify that a little bit because there seems to be some confusion about that aspect. Could we revisit that?
Absolutely. No, I think that's really important. When you're in a self-funded plan, we know that the employer is the final decision.
Oh, I'm sorry. This was earlier on when we were talking. You were talking about I guess a normal insurance.
Oh, the CEO of the insurance company.
Yes. You remember,
okay.
So, so there's a question of whether that, I guess is appropriate or or some people think that might be like too much or taking it too far. Do you feel like that's super important?
If you go into an appeal thinking, being limited, or thinking that anything is too much, too bold, too big, you might as well just forget it right then and there. No, of course not. It's just like fighting your way through any other bureaucracy. This works. I've used it for everything. It works for the bank, it works for the IRS or the store or whomever. And part of the ways I work with people is I'm building up their courage, because if you are afraid of anything with that insurer or that employee, it's a strategy game. It's like a push and pull for control. And if your fear goes into it, then you didn't win. So no, absolutely not. No. Here's the thing. First, they're going to receive your brilliant appeal. And then your phone call to the CEO is just to serve that appeal document and make sure that the decision gets made quickly.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And I think that, sadly, we know the insurance companies aren't really always being considerate of us. And so
it's not their job.
Right.
It's not their, the way I look at it, I don't sit around and complain about how they're mean or evil or anything. It's just, they're huge corporations. And it's in the DNA of a corporation. They're not social service agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, like, for instance, one of the most important things about writing an appeal is to purge all emotion from your appeal. No pictures of your dog. No, I'm deserve to live. None of that stuff. I'm just meticulous about purging all emotion, because
just the facts.
It doesn't work. They're huge corporations, and the job of a corporation is to satisfy their huge corporate investors. It's not our little miserable premiums that are keeping the business. It's those giant investors. And if they don't reduce what they're paying for medical treatments, they call it the medical loss ratio every quarter, then those huge investors will take their money somewhere else. So we just have to know who we're dealing with. But no, I think it's part of how you asked how people get empowered. They get empowered because I make them talk to the CEO. I remember one case where I was fighting the Army or the Air Force. This guy was a retired Air Force officer, and he was off here, and I was over here making, I call it the addressee list, which is the curated list of all the people I'm sending it to. So I make up all this list, and I think the top person on my addressee list for him was the Undersecretary of Defense. And I had like brigadier generals are on there and generals, and he's going to call all of them, right? And he calls me back and he says, "Laurie, we have a chain of command," he said. "We don't do that." And I said, "Mark, do you want to win this appeal?" And he goes, "Yeah." And so he called him. And how empowering is that?
Yeah, it's bold, but you have to be bold.
They're bold. They're going to roll over you like a steamroller if you aren't bold. Besides, it's good for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a great
really
point.
Good.
Do you see this changing? I mean, how do we change this system that seems to be set up to work against us? Is there,
Well, it's evolved. It's not set up exactly. It's evolved into an industry based on deception. And we could have a whole nother hour on how that came to be. But as long as these are private corporations, as long as these are corporations, they're going to act like corporations. I'll just say that about that. But I think if you had to do one thing that would change all this, it would be abolish networks. Now, people think of networks as though they've like always been there, like the rain in Seattle. They don't think about what's the purpose of them or how do they affect me or anything like that. However, back in the 1960s or 50s, there were no networks. Your doctor came out of his medical training and he'd start up in town, he'd buy an x-ray machine, he'd rent a little office, he'd go down to the Rotary Club and glad hand and shake hands and build a practice. Then about 1970, treatments and drugs and tests started getting more expensive. And so the insurers put their heads together in their infinite wisdom and thought, how can we make these doctors stop ordering all this expensive stuff? And what they came up with was the most diabolical means of control imaginable, the network. So they said to the new doctor, you know what? You don't have to go looking for a practice anymore, build up your clientele. Just sign up with us here, and all these patients will have to come to you because they'll have to go where they take their insurance card. In other words, this is an instrument of control for doctors and patients. And now the doctors signed up, and all these patients have to come there no matter how he works or who he is. And yet he's contracted with them. He has to do what they say. And if he doesn't do what they say, they can cancel his contract and he won't have any patients. So the one thing, quick and dirty thing you could do to change everything would be just abolish networks. They don't benefit. The insurance company sold it like, we'll put to the public, like we'll put all these doctors in the network, and then those greedy doctors can't charge so much money anymore. We'll be in control of how much they get paid, which is kind of diabolical. So if you abolish networks, none of that control would be possible, and we would go where we needed to go. Now, I'll tell you also, over the last 8 years, the majority of my appeals have not been for denials. They have been for network issues. People like us, rare cancer people, anybody who needs to get out of the network to get to an expert doctor or an expert surgeon. And so that is the issue, even more so than denials, it's networks. I could go on for another hour about PPOs and out-of-network reimbursement. That's kind of an illusion. But fact of the matter is networks don't benefit anyone but insurance companies.
So for a net patient who may be struggling with that, needing to go out of network, can we talk a little bit and understand a little bit more about, those cases where those appeals that you're working on for network issues? Like, how do they navigate that?
Well, my own appeal 15 years ago was a network issue. They denied the surgery with the doctor in DC because he was out of network. So, most of them have been. Well, let's say you need to get out of network, and your insurance plan says we won't pay for any doctors outside of our network, or maybe you have a certain state Medicaid, and they say we only pay for treatment in this state. There are many different situations where you have to get out. And so you have to prove, the main point you have to prove is that the doctor that's in network is not providing the same treatment as the doctor you want to get to out of network. And there's a million different ways to do that. You have to look up your in-network doctors. You have to interview them, have a consult with them, ask all your questions, learn all you can, look them up, look up their bio. How long have they been doing the treatment? Have they published any scientific articles? Look them up. Just study the in-network doctor, and then study the out-of-network doctor that you want to get to, and prove that he walks on water. And usually that's pretty easy to do because they really are experts. And then there's a lot of other things that go into an appeal. Every appeal I write, I prove to them a dozen different ways why they have to pay for it per the terms of the contract. So in and out of network. One of the important ways to prove why they have to pay for it is if they paid for it before. When your treatment is denied as experimental, you've got to know they've paid for it 100 times before. They just don't want you to find out about it. So we go out in our patient communities and we start building lists of times they've paid for it before. Just as an example, it's called precedent. It's powerful.
Took the word out of my mouth. Yep.
Powerful. Like, I'm the keeper of the precedent for cytoreductive surgery and HIPEC, hyperthermic intraperitoneal chemo. Nobody pays me to do that. I grab cases of precedent and get a HIPAA release for it every time I can. I've got 347 cases of precedent with all different insurers. I arrange them in date order and insurer order. And if someone, for some kind of carcinoid type treatment, started being the keeper of the precedent, pretty soon you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
When you were in that stage where, you're having to appeal that and trying to go out of network and struggling with the struggle that we're talking about today, how are you feeling emotionally? Are you angry? Are you discouraged? Are you, feel hopeless and helpless? Like, what is a patient going through? Because it can't help their recovery, and how they're trying to face their disease. But what exactly does it feel like?
Well, I think it's different for every person, but I can tell you how it was for me. And it wasn't long. I got misdiagnosed to begin with. I was misdiagnosed with ovarian cancer, and given months to live, given a surgery for the wrong thing, which was ovarian cancer. And then 2 different diagnoses from 2 different doctors. chief of oncology telling me, there's no treatment for your disease and they won't pay for it. How I felt was I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel angry at all. I just felt like I'm smarter than these people. And none of these doctors know what they're talking about. And it's obviously up to me. And I care more about it than anybody else. And so I'm going to throw everything I have at it. And we're just going to see what happens here. I mean, I didn't know if I would die that year or not. But I said, if I let them keep me in this network and kill me, I'm going to feel like the world's biggest chump. So I have to know that I've thrown everything at it. And nobody thought that I would win. I mean, these friends sat around and the crocodile tears, and I guess you'll have to go to the local surgeon who's done 3 of these. And it's like I just quietly did my research and stayed up half the night. I thought, this is my hero's journey. I thought I'd already had my big stories. This is my hero's journey. I'm throwing everything at it. And as it turned out, it was more than enough. And I learned that I wasn't afraid of anything. I'm a literary person. I saw this as my Wizard of Oz moment, my, my hero's journey, my Joseph Campbell moment.
I love it. I love you. I love the storytelling references. So
I really didn't. I mean, I'm sure I cried sometimes. It was pretty darn stressful, but basically, I kind of enjoyed it.
So in sticking with the hero's journey theme, at the end of the hero's journey, he or she enters a new world, right?
Mm-hmm,
So I'm curious, what do you have on the horizon? What is the new frontier, the new world for the insurance warrior? Is there a new challenge that you're trying to face? What's coming in the future for you?
Well, I've already written 2 books, so I've kind of done that.
Right.
But as a project, things did slow down a little bit, when the pandemic came along,
Sure.
because I think some surgeries were postponed and things like that. But I thought, I need to open some new doors. And so my way of doing that was to figure out how to make videos, because I thought, if people hear me, if they can see me, I just don't want all this to be lost.
Mhm.
And I feel like if people could only learn that no appeal was ever meant to lead to an approval, or speed is a strategy, or not luck, but strategy, any of those things, they'd be that much more likely to be able to win these battles.
Yeah.
And so I just took a whole year trying to figure out how to buy a video camera and lights and editing software and all that. So this is the project I set myself, just to bring all this out into the open world and see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, I obviously, I mean, that's a world that I know pretty well, and I totally, agree that you should. It allows you to reach more people and to impact more people. I mean, this is what we've learned here at the foundation, is this program here. I mean, if we try to have, effectively this one-on-one situation that we have with you or any of our experts physically, it'd be nearly impossible. We wouldn't be able to reach the amount of people. It would be so costly for everybody involved. And so,
well, this is kind of a benefit, isn't it? I mean, it is for me too. I can do so much more.
Exactly. You can create it. And if you can't work with someone, or they can't afford to hire you personally, like, you can put this more cost-effective solution out there for them. You record it once, and then it can go out an infinite amount of time. So it's such a great way.
I mean, ultimately, as I get better at the videos, I'd like it to actually be a class.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking that when we first started talking about this would be such a great course, and that you have a demand for it and an audience for it. So I commend you on that decision, because and I think more experts should do that. So I such a great choice. I think it's, our video series has been so impactful that it's opened our eyes to how effective this medium really is. So I think it's a great choice.
I feel like we've just gotten started too, Rain. I feel like I have words for doctors. I have words for device manufacturers. And, I'd be glad to do this again anytime.
Awesome. Before we go, any final words? I always like to ask a final question. And I always am caught up in the thoughts and emotions of a newly diagnosed patient. The beginning of this journey that has a lot of twists and turns, and none of the journeys are the same. Any final words or parting advice for a newly diagnosed patient?
Well, that's kind of a tall order. I just say, you just know that all things are possible. It's a steep learning curve. You don't have to understand it all right now. And like I say, all things are possible.
Well, I see everybody saying great information, Laurie. Thank you so much. Everybody's been really excited to hear from you today, and I have been too. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for stopping by the
And
show.
thank you folks for listening and watching.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you to our guest, Laurie Todd, the insurance warrior. Where can they find out more about you and your books, Laurie?
That's my website. It's
Okay.
theinsurancewarrior.com.
Okay.
And that's where we start. And I also have I've started my little YouTube channel. It's called the Insurance Warrior YouTube
Yeah,
channel.
we just put a link to that in the comments, so you all can find that link there. Go visit Laurie on her YouTube channel.
And you
Check
can
out
also find me if you have a question. I give free advice all day long. If you have a question, you contact me.
Good to know. Thanks everybody at home for joining us. As always, we hope you enjoyed the program and it gave you some answers that you were seeking. And if you have further questions, reach out to Carcinoid here at the Facebook page. You can message them privately or you can email them at carcinoid.org. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor, Tercera Therapeutics. Without them, this program wouldn't be possible. Thanks to you at home. Thanks to you, Laurie Todd. My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, everybody, and join us next week for Luncheon with the Experts. Bye-bye now.